I'm very, very concerned for your well-being. About what you're about to see.
I'm concerned for my own mental health well-being, like after you see who I am right now.
I also have a dark fantasy. I'm like, I would love if we came on camera and we're the same person.
Stop. Or that we're from the same like cinematic universe. That would be incredible.
Okay. Well, I'm actually scared. All right, I'm gonna put my camera on, but I'm gonna hold my hand up in front of it. I'm panicking. I'm very nervous.
Okay, I just saw a glimpse of something.
You didn't see nothing.
I saw like
you didn't see nothing.
Print.
No. You ready to reveal on 3?
I'm ready.
All right. Are you gonna do the countdown? Should I do it?
I'll do it. 3, 2, 1.
What? Not Shelley Toma!
Stop. Thank God you're Lisa. Thank freaking God.
Kim Richards.
Wait.
Wait, I'd stand up. I need to see this whole outfit real quick. Holy shit.
And I'm having way too much freaking fun. Like, I've been running around my apartment just being like...
Like, put a camera.
Okay.
Wait.
Whew! The fact that Shelley Duvall and Lisa Rinna are about to host a podcast together is just...
You know...
I'm sorry. You can't make this up.
You're so angry.
You're so angry.
You look angry.
Are you just like living your best life right now?
I think my sister told me to do this. She was like, you should do Lisa Rinna because you look like Lisa Rinna. And I was like, shut the hell up. And then I put on the makeup and I put on the wig, which these headphones aren't even doing justice to like.
Yeah. I need to see the full. Truly. And you got the hoops in.
Oh, yes, I do. The nails, the bridge.
Oh my God, the lips. Honey, you were just giving. I love it so much. I love it so much.
It's wackadoodle time.
It's wackadoodle time. It is wackadoodle time. It is wackadoodle time.
Harry Hamlin. Harry, you look sick. You look ill.
I am ill. I was like, because you know me, I'm always like all about looking tanned, bronzed, and I was like,
this is the palest I have seen you ever. I didn't know it was actually possible for you to get this like fair.
And I'm kind of enjoying it.
Really? How
do you feel? I'm kind of like...
You look so different. It's crazy.
I know. And I feel like I did a little bit of a red lip so that it really made me look more pale. But I'm trying to get the gauntness of Shelley in that movie.
It's there. You look ill.
Thank you, baby.
We could not be on different like color palettes, like further away from each other.
Oh my God. And the pink mic. I love that that's the through line with all of your looks.
Welcome to the red carpet. I'm Lisa Rinna. I'm your host.
You.
We're going to be back with the stars tonight.
Thank you for being a housewife. This was a fantasy of mine that I needed fulfilled. So I just want to thank you.
First of all, the pleasure truly is all mine. I had a fantasy that we were both going to come on and be Lisa Rinna.
Okay. So last week, funny story. Also, how does this sound, by the way? Are we good?
I think you're good. Wait, hold on.
Okay. Because I know I want to
speak loud, speak clear.
Testing 1, 2.
You sound fine.
Okay.
Daddy! By the way, not a prop. Actually using this.
Good. Shelley probably wouldn't drink Sprite Zero, but
I disagree heavily. I disagree heavily, but that's difference in opinion. It's fine.
Okay, so last week when we both were saying we might have been housewives, I thought that you might come on as Lisa Rinna as Erica Jane. Do you remember that?
That's
the
too
Halloween
meta.
episode?
That's too niche. It's too niche.
So
but I know
niche.
exactly the costume. But like, I actually thought about doing Erica Jane because that's also another great like silhouette to do.
Yeah.
What were the other ones? I wanted to do Kathy Hilton, but I was like, that's too niche. Nobody's gonna get it. But like the iconic silhouette of Rinna.
Oh God, it's so good. I love it so much.
So did you just talk about the husband? Don't you ever go near my husband.
Go dear, my husband.
Is it better with glasses or without?
I mean, it's both are incredible, but you do look like her without the glasses on.
I think it's just my face.
I think it might be. It's great. Oh my God.
Baby. There's a lot going on. Hi, creepers. Welcome back.
Hi, creepers.
Oh, God help me.
God help us.
I gotta say, like doing full drag at like starting at 9 a.m. and 9 a.m. It's just like, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's mentally a lot.
I know. I was giggling to myself because I once again have the curled lashes. That's the one thing.
The one thing you won't give up.
In all of my looks. I'm like, damn it, I put on mascara this morning.
Oh, because you just like, it's like force of habit. You just do it.
Yeah, I just like put it on.
Okay, I had falsies when I did Winifred and I was trying to reuse them. That's what took me so damn long. Like I had most of this put together and I was like, I need falsies. And I couldn't find my lash glue. And I was like, shit. I was like, Bill O'Reilly. I was like, fuck it. We'll do it live. But here we are. You got what you get.
I mean, you could do Lisa Rinna in drag. I'm being dead serious.
Oh, I know. I was like, the palette is here.
The palette's there.
Palette's there. This didn't take a lot of contour, to be honest. Like this truly was just like the lips were the most important piece, of course. What was I want to hear about? Wait, what was your makeup research like for? What is the character's name that Shelley plays?
Wendy Torrance. Yeah,
God, I haven't seen The Shining in so long. Also, the commitment to the bit, the poster in the background. Are you joking?
Well, I was like, what? Like, am I just gonna look like a gaunt person with a knife? And then I was like, and then there's this amazing record store around the corner from me, and I saw that they had a Shining poster, and I was like, oh my God, that's literally perfect.
No, it reads though. I mean, like the outfit, the turtleneck, the wig, every bit of it, even without the poster, I was like, I know exactly who you are.
Oh my God. Well, that's good. Because I've just been getting way too into character.
I was gonna say, because I took the most amount of time today. How long were you sitting in this look, in this makeup?
If I checked my pits, I could tell you, because I was sweating like a mofo.
It's true. Because we have to turn off AC and shit for like this show. So like we just sit in the heat.
And her character has a robe on, and then this is my dad's shirt, and then a turtleneck, shirt, and I'm like, but
it looks accurate. Like it looks like the exact outfit from the movie.
I tried, and mysteriously had most of the components.
What are some of the lines she says? Jack, Danny, there's something wrong, and she's always smoking a cigarette. There's something wrong with him, Doc.
I know that was the other iconic look, is when she's like sitting at the table and she's got on these like,
and the ash of the cigarette is literally this long. Like the cigarette is burned down to the yellow, like to the orange bit, and she's just like holding it as if that cigarette is still going somewhere. It's got a few more drags in it. It's amazing.
Oh my God. Has Lisa Rinna ever been in a horror movie, by the way?
She was recently in one that was on Lifetime, but I don't know if it was a horror. It was more of a thriller where she played, it's actually a really fucked up concept. She played a mom whose daughter was being like viciously taunted and cyberbullied by like an anonymous girl online who was like exposing all these things about her. But the twist is that, sorry, Lifetime. The twist is that Lisa Rinna, her own mother, is the one doing it to her daughter.
Oh my God.
Very Lisa.
Incredible. Very Lisa coded.
Oh, Kim. She's an addict. Kim's an
Harry
shoot
Hamlin.
Me. Harry Hamlin. I need a drink. And a Xanax. And
my pill bag. Get on a fucking table and dance. That's
come on,
iconic.
You bitch. It's so good.
It's so good.
Well, welcome back, everybody, to CreepTime, the podcast.
Yes,
pull my hamstring.
Do you have a dress on?
No, I have a women's blouse and I have men's basketball shorts on and bare dogs, bare feet on the ground, open toes. Like the top to bottom could also not be more different. It's just
incredible.
I also had to shave this morning. I had to do a full clean shave for this. It's really no joke.
Well, you look fab.
Thank you, baby. Thank you.
Welcome.
Creepers, we're so excited that you joined us for yet another Halloween episode to celebrate all of October that we are going to be in costume together. Welcome back to CreepTime, everybody. If you are brand new, We're your hosts. I'm Silas Dean.
Like, we need to be checked into a mental institution. I'm Stu.
I don't know. I think that these are costumes that are showing intent, clear focus, vision, and all around creativity. So I think that we're clear of the asylum for now.
And that's that on that, baby.
For now. But we come out with new episodes every single week if you're brand new, so we would love if you stuck around, if you followed the show or subscribed to it. Also, if you left a comment on Spotify. Oh, that was the other thing I was going to say. I've realized that there are so many people who listen on Apple who have had no idea that we're doing video podcasts. So they've just been listening to these episodes, these costume episodes, and they're like,
stop.
What the hell are they dressed as? They're like, I wish I could see it. So for anybody who doesn't know, video podcasting is only supported on Spotify for right now, but we're also uploading these onto YouTube, so it's accessible for free to anybody. So if you do want to see us, head over to either CreepTime the podcast on YouTube or check us out on Spotify, because you're going to get a whole lot full of imagery.
And if you don't want to check us out, probably best for your health.
No, your loss. Also, the wig
your loss.
was too light. I had to get root touch up and spray the whole thing.
Stop. You're so committed. I'm
It's
dead.
all over my... Look at this. It's like the more I tease it, the more it's falling apart.
Oh my God. It's so good. Get on a table and dance.
Get on a table and dance, bitch.
You look just like her.
It's too much.
It's too much.
I did learn a good trick for like contouring the lips though. That I feel like I did it this morning and I was like, God, I hope it works. But I did brown liner on the outside, all the way on the perimeter.
Who'd you learn that from? Because I've learned that too.
I just tested it. I was like, I feel like this would make sense. I was like, 'cause
Yeah.
that's where like the shadow of a lip would be. Like I literally did it this morning and I was like, bitch, you could flop hard. And I did brown liner, a huge brown liner. And she also has this like little Joker mouth. It like juts out at the, so I did like lines that come straight out.
It looks, it's accurate, baby. And to get those lips right.
Tough, not easy. And then I took red eyeshadow and I was dragging in from the brown perimeter. And I feel like it really worked. Like it really like created something that like even in the mirror, I was like, this kind of looks real.
Yeah.
A little bit.
I think it was Mario. I forget his last name. That's
Makeup by
Kim's,
Mario.
Makeup by Mario. Kim's Kardashian's makeup artist, but he says he always does on her like brown kind of on the outer corner. And then he kind of blends it like as it gets further, but really like doing the outer corners makes your lips look bigger.
Yeah, it's like a lip contour basically.
Yeah.
This was just a very extraordinary version of the lip contour. But as I was saying before, again, welcome back. We have a lot to cover in this episode because you don't know which case we are doing, but I did tell you we are going to do a Seattle case because we are going in succession of our tour dates. So if you didn't realize on the previous episodes, we are going in order of the tour dates that we are going to play starting March 1st. If you want to get your tickets at creeptime.com. So we started with Los Angeles and then we shifted over to Sacramento where we did Dorothea Puente. We just did Portland where you did the Martin family. We are now at Seattle where I was racking my brain because I was like, I know there's something huge in Seattle or someone who originated in Seattle and I couldn't put my finger on it. This is a big case. We're going to do a big story today.
Oh God. Okay.
That's partially the I spent a lot of time researching it because I was like, this is not one that you can sort of do lightly. You can't do any of them lightly, but I was like, this is one where there is a comprehensive breakdown of every detail. But before we are going to dive straight into it, we should talk about Magic Mind a little bit, shouldn't we?
We should.
I had one this morning.
Did you? I had one last night.
You're not going to get away with it, Kathy, if you don't have Magic Mind. You said what you said.
Yeah.
You said what you said. And you have to take responsibility.
Lisa Rinna definitely drinks Magic Mind. She needs to be in a constant flow state in order to talk with those lips.
I love Lisa's look. I think Lisa's look is truly like one of the most iconic from the Housewives franchise. Like
truly.
I just love that she's like truly never really changed it. Like it always comes back to like square one, you know?
Oh, wait. Well, the hair has, as Brandy said, the hair hasn't been changed in 30 years or something like that. And then she gets so upset.
She literally makes it, she goes,
even Andy like chuckles, I remember.
I mean, that's how you become iconic. I'm sorry, but
it is.
Magic Mind, yes. Lisa is definitely drinking it, as are we. I had one this morning.
I had one literally last night. I was just like in the mood. I know I always come back to the flavor, but sometimes I just, because we know I don't drink water. I don't drink anything that doesn't have flavor. So but I looked at my fridge. I was like, I'm going to pop a Magic Mind right now.
Sometimes they just feel nice. Yeah.
They just feel nice. Yeah. But they just put you in that like perfect little flow state, and it doesn't give you jitters, and it's
not at all.
And I really want to hear from creepers if they've gotten to try it. Tell us how they like it.
I know a number of them have. A number of them have tried Magic Mind, which is great because they're using the codes that we have available. So please, if you're considering it, we want you to get a discount, as does Magic Mind. So you can use CreepTime20 at magicmind.com/CreepTime20. That is going to give you 20% off either a single time purchase or a subscription. We would love to hear how you like Magic Mind. It does feel very unbrand for a spooky podcast to be doing something with something called Magic Mind. But again, I can't rave enough about the flavor, no jitters, the state that it puts me in. I really do feel like I'm more efficient. I do more work when I have them. And I saw an email that was forwarded to me because Magic Mind listened to the last episode and they were like, Stu doesn't have the sleep shot.
I need it.
No, that's been worked out.
Oh my
it's coming your way, babies.
Oh, I'm excited. You know what's so funny? When I was just home visiting this last week, a friend of mine that started listening to the podcast.
Birthday. Happy birthday, belated Jules.
Happy birthday, Jules. A friend
From
of mine
Lisa herself, baby.
She said, Harry Hamlin. My friend was like, oh my God, I just started listening to your podcast and I love Magic Mind. I can't believe they're one of your sponsors. And I was like, yeah, they're amazing. And they were like, yeah, I've been taking Magic Mind for years. I love that. So that was kind of cool.
That's awesome. That's like the same thing that happened with my brother when he was like, he came to the live show in Vegas and he was like, Magic Mind? You guys got Magic Mind? Because he loves them. So again, creepers, if you want to join the Magic Mind bandwagon, if you want to get on the train with us, please join us. Go to magicmind.com/creeptime. Use that code. Get your discount today. From Lisa.
I was going to say, that's Lisa Rinna HSN.
This is Lisa Rinna QVC. HSN. I was like, you're blending worlds. There's Nancy. There's Lisa Rinna.
That's right.
That universe
QVC.
Keeps on spinning. Can we walk them through the colors today?
You know I own a pair of Lisa Rinna pants from QVC.
I know. How much? She has a makeup line, pants. Does she have a whole like apparel line, like clothing too?
I honestly don't know because I will say I didn't order these for myself. My mom gifted them to me.
The greatest gift you could receive.
And they're so comfy.
I bet they are, to be honest. I was like, I don't know where her makeup is sold because I've never seen it in Sephora. It might be online only, but I wanted to do like a Lisa Rinna look with Lisa Rinna makeup because I thought it'd be funny.
God.
But Lisa, you got Elf today and a little bit of Wet and Wild.
And is that the same long legs lip?
No, actually, I got a different one. Okay. Most of the lip is actually eyeshadow. It's
That's amazing. Well, they really do look so luscious.
It's all just like that blend, that contouring to like create the blur, but yeah, I had to go specific. I had to really do some dramaturg research for this. So now that we have spoken about Magic Mind, we have spoken about tour. Again, get your tickets at creeptime.com. We would love to see you there at any of the Western dates. Tickets are selling fast and they are in limited supply. So please come out with a friend, family, solo, whatever you want. We will meet you there, baby, in a creepy theater.
Yes.
But with that said, I have a very, very heavy case for you. As I mentioned, I do have pictures. Jesus, just broke my elbow. I do have pictures for you. Let me just copy the link so I can get it ready.
Yeah.
This is changing my voice. I can hear it.
Lisa,
let me just get it ready.
Let me just get it ready for you.
Kim?
I know. It really does depend on what character we're in. I hear our voices change. Like
it's incredible.
It's crazy.
Like it like actually never ceases to astound me. Like the transformation that like nails will do, that like a wig will. The wigs, they make you feel different. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, of course. It's the hackery that lives within us. The theater kid hackery. Of course.
Absolutely. Well, let me just start us off here. Again, thank you everybody for stopping by the show. Before we get into this episode and this case, this is going to be a larger case than normal for what we usually cover. I know we typically focus in on unsolved or disappearance cases, and there's a little bit of back and forth and discussion about what might have happened. This will be somewhat different. So, in Seattle, Washington, I want to take us back to a time, if I'm going to start talking about this, because there is a very monumental case in the true crime world that originated in Seattle. And I'm sure it is one that you have heard, all of you have heard. But shockingly, some people may not know the full story, myself included, because I tend to stray from, I don't know how you feel about this, Stu, but I tend to stray sometimes from like the huge names because there's so much coverage around them that I really fixate on stories that have been kind of forgotten a little bit, like stories of the unsolved that people haven't touched in like decades. So this is on the opposite end of the spectrum, possibly one of the most infamous cases to ever come out of the 1970s. So I am going to take us back to the year 1974. We are in a college apartment. The date is January 4th, and it's just after midnight. Now, in that apartment, there are typically 3 young women who live there. Karen Sparks, who was just 18 years old. There was Mary Adams and Terry Codwell. But on this night, 18-year-old Karen was completely alone in the basement room of the apartment. When just after the clock struck 12, somebody, very stealth, broke into that apartment. And the absolute horrors that were committed within those walls would mark what is believed to be the first known successful attack of a very infamous man. Now, just for some additional context, Karen Sparks, this 18-year-old, this apartment was at the University of Washington, which is in the Seattle area. And she was a student at the university at the time. And I believe she was actually studying dance. So that made all of this even more catastrophic as I was personally reading it. But on this night, with this man in her apartment, she was struck without warning using a metal rod, which was used to completely bludgeon her. Ugh. That exact rod was then used to violently sexually assault her so horrifically. She suffered such horrible internal damage. Her bladder had burst within her body.
Oh my God.
By the time she was found, she did survive. So this was considered the very first known attack, not the very first kill of this person. But she was unconscious for upwards, I think, of 10 or 12 different days before she would finally regain consciousness. And she, of course, had severe brain damage, lifelong internal injury. She had lost parts of her vision, parts of her hearing. I mean, she was changed forever. Not even a month after that, there was another girl in the area who met a similar fate. So this man broke into that basement room of a 21-year-old college student. Her name was Linda Ann Healy. She was a University of Washington undergraduate who had actually broadcast the morning radio weather reports that I was reading for like skiers. Mm. So Linda would succumb to her injuries. She was beat to the point of unconsciousness by this man who then very carefully dressed her body in jeans, a white blouse, and her own boots, and then drove her out to a remote area where he then assaulted her and would eventually take her life, I believe from strangulation. He then disposed of the body, and this would mark the very first known kill of his reign. These crimes, collectively, would mark the beginning of an era of something truly horrific that was happening in the Northwest in the 1970s, and would ultimately be connected back to one name that lives on in complete infamy. We are covering Ted Bundy today.
Oh my God. Okay. I thought that's where this was going. And
let's just talk about all of that and the breakdown. What do you know about Ted Bundy? How much do you know about the case, the full story? Because there are a lot of crimes to cover.
I mean, I just know how massive, like how long his reign kind of was. And I don't know a ton about Ted Bundy. I mean, I know.
Isn't that, I didn't really,
it's weird.
of course, you know, it's horrific. You know, you're like, that is an infamous name in the true crime world, but it's almost so, it's like so well known that you kind of stray from, at least that's what I do. I'm like, that case is so well known.
Yeah.
I just put it on the back burner where I'm like, I will unpack that one day.
And I got to be honest, I have never watched a movie where they've kind of, I know like Zac Efron, I think was in a movie recently about him.
Well, yeah, I never watched. Was it a movie or was it a show?
That.
There was a lot of criticism around it, right?
I think so. But I'm kind of going in pretty just basic level knowledge. So I'm very interested to hear all the deets.
I definitely knew, of course, he's a serial killer. That's baseline level knowledge, but I did not know the magnitude of what he had done. Like, I actually, while I was reading it, I was like, I don't think I have read of anybody like this. And it like shocked me because I don't think that he's usually talked about in that way, which I think is a really interesting point that we could talk about towards the end. And I think that's a part of the reason that the movie or the show with Zac Efron was made, because so much of what sort of painted this story and illustrated the problem with his eventual, case, his trial, his investigation, the sentencing, was this charismatic persona that he had.
Yes.
These like classic good looks that he had. And that like wavers for a lot of people, like what they think about this case, what they think about him. They're like, well, if he doesn't look like a monster, how could he be a monster? That's the point. I
feel like Ted Bundy was sort of the blueprint for that, like good looking serial killer archetype that, like, in an odd way, it kind of is in Night Stalker too. Like,
it like exacerbated what came after in the 80s with the Night
people
Stalker.
Being so interested in them also because of the way they looked. So, but I'm more interested knowing how deep we're going to go into it, like everything besides, like outside of that, because that's all I really know. So I want to know more about him as like a person. Well,
let me go through here. I'll toggle back to my notes real quick, and I am going to give a full breakdown because, like I said, this is a big case. This is a heavy case. So I just want to say before we do any cases like this, of course, creepers who are listening, please be kind to yourselves. Protect yourselves through this because we are going to get into some very graphic details. I still think it's an important story to cover because I wrestled with that. I was like, if the case is so well known, why retell the story? And I think it's to resurrect that conversation, not only to resurrect the stories of the victims that often get lost and forgotten when this story is retold, but also to have the conversation about this dichotomy of, I guess, the lust of the public over a figure like Bundy versus the very real and tangible evidence that sits before you of how horrific these crimes were. People don't remember how bad this really was.
Exactly. I think it's really important to cover it because someone like Ted Bundy gets so glamorized in the media in an odd way. So it's really important, I think, that we go back and look at these victims and remind people of what a horrible human he was.
I agree. I was going to say, wasn't that kind of the initial criticism with Zac Efron playing him? They were like, why would you glamorize it with this good-looking Hollywood actor? So. But I think that that's kind of illustrating the point in a very hyperbolic way.
Yeah.
Like there's somebody who maybe at the time was so likable and so attractive as Zac Efron, fulfilling this role of somebody who was monstrous when you look at the breadth of the things that he had done and what that kind of does internally for people, why people wrestle with that and like why both ends of it seem so powerful. I think it's an interesting conversation to have, but I'm first going to run through some of the backstory on his life. But before I do, I will send you a link with pictures. Did you have any idea where we're getting? I mean, this is a lot to do in a Lisa Rinna wig, I'm going to be honest, but I will do my absolute best here.
I honestly had no idea because when you told me that obviously we're going to do a Seattle case, I was like,
never connected it. Never connected
I didn't make the connection.
Yeah.
Okay. I got it.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you could just look at the first page for now, that's going to show a lot of like pictures from his early days, as well as his mother, I believe, is on there. So I will put all of these up on Reddit for creepers. If you do want to see images while you follow along with the case, you can go to CreepTime, the podcast on Reddit. Everything will be there, as is for all of our cases. So what is his backstory? Let me give you a little bit of context so I can fill in what his life was like before all of this happened. So Ted Bundy was born Theodore Robert Cowell on November 24th, 1946, and he was actually born in a home away from his home. It was like a home for unwed mothers where like parents in the 40s could send away their daughters who were pregnant out of wedlock. So basically think of it as like a shelter for women, right? And It was in Burlington, Vermont. That's where this all started. Historically, with this case, there was a lot of confusion around who his father actually was. His mother has said one thing, there's something different on his birth certificate, but nobody has definitively ever pinned who his dad was. There was actually a rumor for quite a while that seemed possibly substantiated that he might have been born out of an incestuous relationship. But that was later disproven, so I'm not going to go deep into that. That was disproven through DNA analysis. But again, his father is a bit of an unknown in this. It's just his mom. Now, he was actually raised by his grandparents because after his mother had him, the shame of her having a child out of wedlock was so great that the grandparents raised him as if his grandmother had had him. So he grew up for a period of time believing his grandparents were his parents, and his own mother, who lived in the house, was his older sister. Isn't that wild?
Wow. Yeah.
I think, and she wasn't even that, she was young, but she was 22 at the time. Like, she wasn't, I think when I was reading the story in my mind, I was like, she must have been like 15 or 16 or something for them to like bury this secret. But I guess it was really just the wedlock thing. So he's raised by his grandparents. There are different depictions of his earlier years. So it's kind of difficult for me to pinpoint through the research that I read, the interviews that I listened to, what was real and what was a narrative that he was building. You'll learn this about him throughout this process. He's very manipulative, and also I consider him to be very unstable with his personality. He seems to craft the world around him and force fit narratives to like retell stories. So that makes it difficult for people who have like really focused in on this case to be like, well, what really happened to you? Like, what was your childhood like? The thing that does seem consistent, although I have seen things that counter this, that say it happened when he was older, but I read several times that when he was young, he was clued in that his grandparents were his grandparents and not his parents. And it was revealed that his sister was actually his mother. I read some reports that a cousin of his like actually told him this when he was pretty young, and it just dismantled his world. And the reason I'll draw attention to it now is because a lot of psychologists, in retrospect, who have looked at this case, they think that this could have been maybe one of several inciting incidents where he got this deep-pitted feeling that he could not trust women because he had felt so deceived by his grandmother, like actual grandmother, his own mother who was posing as his sister. It like embedded something in him. I'll also say around this time when he was growing up, he did not come from wealthy means at all. He was actually quite, I wouldn't say fully impoverished, but they were struggling quite a bit. And he would often go on to say later in life that he came from a really tumultuous financial situation with the family. His grandfather was cruel, abusive at times, would beat his wife, would beat the dog. Like, he talks about a lot of different traumas, but he goes in and out of whether or not they were real or it's something he's fabricating. It's difficult to tell.
Okay.
So there were also depictions that I found of him being a very troubled child when he was as young as 3 years old. There were people who claimed that he had exhibited odd behavior, abnormal behavior for a child of this age. An instance when I think the younger sister of his mother, so technically his aunt, woke up and found, like she was taking a nap and woke up and she found that she was surrounded by kitchen knives. And she claimed that this was done by a 3 or 4 year old Ted Bundy.
What in the world?
So a very early, very abnormal and strange affinity towards maybe violence or a budding interest in hurting people. It's really difficult to say. These are early years. I should say, since you're looking at the pictures, do you have any initial inclinations just about how he looks from like his high school photo, from the photo when he's a child?
I mean, I don't know how old she is in this picture, and I'm looking like over here on my monitor, but his mother looks quite old here. Do you know how old she was?
I think that particular photo was from well after the fact.
Well after, okay.
Yeah, that might have been after he was like caught, possibly after he was sentenced, to be honest. So I think that's a photo. It was very difficult to find pictures of her when she was younger.
I guess it's just striking because, he looks very, I guess how we see him portrayed, he looks very handsome. He looks like a pretty happy kid. And then like you look at the photo of the mom and it's just, I could already kind of sense just a weird like dichotomy relationship between the two of them. And I'm curious, I don't know if you know this, but like, was he classified as a psychopath?
Most psychologists who have looked at this believe he's a textbook psychopath.
Textbook, okay.
Yeah. They also think that he's a textbook narcissist. Many people believe that he has antisocial personality disorder. Again, neither of us are qualified to make a proper diagnosis on him, but I'm just relaying what most psychologists who have looked at the case, have looked at him, believe. He seems to have very shallow emotions, difficulty creating emotional attachments to people around him. There's a callousness to him, very manipulative. I mean, these are just the facts of his personality as he presents, as we would learn. But I mean, just curious how you feel about some of the early indications of him maybe being violent, because I found that the most interesting, that as young as 3 years old, people think that he had an abnormal fixation on violence. That comes from something, doesn't it?
Yeah, I was wondering, I'm like, is that sort of the replacement for like hurting animals, or like if they didn't, there's got to be some like
which
inciting.
By the way, he also
does.
according to other kids in the neighborhood who were afraid of him, they said they saw him hurt animals.
It's just, that's definitely not normal. I mean, but it tracks for me. There's always some sort of, I feel like with these, especially this kind of genre of serial killer, there's always like some odd, very violent tendency from a young age.
And I wonder where that comes from, though. Yeah, Knives at 3 years old. And I always link it back, and I'm like, nothing just happens. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, something might have been happening to him, or he was exposed to something, like something was going on in that environment. I really wrestle with that idea that like children are born with an inclination to do this. I know there is some data to support that like there are different types of brains that can be predisposed to being killers. That's very real. I've researched it before, but I still believe that the majority of it must be environmental. I really think that.
That he had watched somebody maybe be violent. I don't know.
Possibly his grandfather. That's what he said. He said his grandfather was a cruel and violent man, but he also goes back on that. That's the thing. You never really know what's real with this guy because he's constantly peddling and like writing the book of his life. It's very strange, but I'm going to keep pressing on. Well, fast forward a little bit, plow through his childhood. We're going to get to his teen years, where he was a self-described loner, although people who remembered him from high school do not remember it quite that way. Again, he likes to paint this picture of the whole arc of his life, that he is a certain type of way. Says he's a loner, said he was very isolated. That was his perception through the years. When he got to the age for college, he attended a school briefly where I believe he was actually enrolled. This was confusing because it just listed Chinese, so I wasn't sure if he was studying Chinese culture or he was specifically studying Mandarin, but that's what he was enrolled for. Took a break from school, left that school, transferred to the University of Washington, which was a significant period in his life solely because he met a girl. And this was the first thing that I read about where he had a true, proper girlfriend for the very first time. He met this young woman named Diane Edwards. It was a girl that he would later claim that he was devoted to, like very much in love with. Possibly, I'm going to guess, his first love. But she eventually broke it off with him in 1968, claiming that he was emotionally inept, immature, and he had no ambition. The reason I call attention to this, and I think it's important, is because you'll learn from some of the history of his childhood and the means that he came from, this whole embarrassment complex that he had about the poor circumstances he came from, feeling like he needed to climb a social ladder. He needed to get to a certain social class. So to already have the seed of the distrust from his mother, if it was true that that was revealed when he was younger, that that was actually his mother and not his sister, and then to have this relationship, who he called his first love, abandon him and tell him that he's non-ambitious, he's emotionally immature. Again, it seems ridiculous and silly to say that these are the inciting incidents that could have made a serial killer, but there are so many psychologists who talk about this moment in 1968 because they believe he actually started his attacks the following year in 69.
I mean, it's also something to be said for when it's your first love. If you haven't received that kind of love before, which it kind of sounds like he hadn't,
it's possible,
once that crumbles, like that could have wrecked him. That could have really rocked his world.
It's very, and I also will say, I mean, at a certain point, his mother did remarry to a man who had the last name Bundy, which is where he got the last name Bundy because he was formally adopted. But he had other siblings, like half siblings in that house. And he would go on to say like he was disconnected from his stepfather, disconnected from his half siblings. He felt like a stranger living in that house growing up. So I also want to call attention to like that part of his teenhood where he was reaching the age of an adult, but he was still feeling like there was a family life happening around him that he wasn't a part of. He just had a last name. So again, this woman broke up with him. That was 1968, called him emotionally inept, immature, and psychologists believe this could have been the true inciting incident. But before we're actually going to talk about any of the attacks that might have happened in 1969, we're going to talk about the very first attack that is confirmed, which was starting in 1974. That was the one that I drew attention to in the very beginning of the show. This is while he's in college, because he transferred again. He was actually an honor roll student, and he was studying psychology, believe it or not. He also dipped his toes in wanting to get involved with politics, and he actually joined Governor Daniel J. Evans' reelection campaign. I believe he was a Republican official who was trying to get reelected. He had joined the campaign in like some entry-level position, and then he applied and was accepted into law school, where he planned to continue his education. So this is a shockingly capable mind, I will say. It seemed that he was on a path where he was really trying to disprove what had been told to him by that first love, that he was non-ambitious, he was immature, he couldn't accomplish something. He had this distrust in women, and he had this fire under him where he wanted to climb the ladder. But somehow all of that gets disrupted with an even greater need than ambition. It's this impulse to kill. Just initial thoughts on where we're at with that. Him getting to law school, him sort of climbing the social ladder and getting involved in politics at a young age.
It's reminding me of Psycho. It's reminding me of that same kind of American Psycho, like of the same kind of profile of, is it Bateman? What's his name? Patrick Bateman?
Christian. No, not Bateman. Sorry. Christian Bale.
Christian Bale. Christian Bale plays him. But that same
like
kind
Bateman
of profile,
Jason
Bateman,
yes.
of somebody who has such a charisma about them and such a charm, and they recognize that, and they're like, oh, I can use this to my advantage.
Right. Which is, he saw it as a tool. That was the thing. He was like, I'm very good socially. Like he had found his way in. I don't know if it was because he came into his looks and he was like, this is a card that I can play, or I have a newfound confidence because I'm an attractive guy. Like there was something about this period in his life where it felt easy for him to manipulate people. I don't know if it was a lack of conscience or if he was just sort of testing the waters and ended up getting really good at it because he wasn't doing anything else. But it's interesting you bring attention to that. Now, as I mentioned before, we are going to start the attacks in 1974 because there are cases that are factually tied to Bundy. We can definitively say he is the culprit. It is highly suspected that many of his attacks and possibly his murders began in 1969. This is 1 year following the devastating breakup that so many psychologists think is that inciting incident. But because we can't fully confirm the earlier stories of possibly the attempted abductions of being 100% confirmed and linked to him, there was one in Atlantic City of like someone who went missing. There was the murder of a hitchhiker, I believe, and there are so many excessive details, but again, I can't pin it on him, so I'm not going to go too deep into those. I'm just going to start us in 74, right where we left off. We've got one girl beaten to the point where she has severe brain damage. Not long after, we have one girl who was killed. Her body is dumped. These are horrifying cases, and we are at the beginning of what he is going to do. Like there is something so monstrous that is about to begin and carry on through 1974. There are suddenly, throughout this year, a whole handful of very young female college students in the northwestern region, mostly between Oregon and Washington, who begin vanishing at a shocking rate. At least one girl every single month was going missing. All kind of fit like a similar profile. So there was definitely some kind of connection, but it became this terrifying circumstance where people had never seen something like this and nobody could explain. They didn't find bodies right away, so nobody could explain where the girls were going in 1974. So while this is going down up in Washington near the Seattle area, as well as Oregon, all these missing women, most of the victims seem to fit that similar profile I was mentioning. We've got young, very attractive, usually white females with long hair, and they all usually seem to have a middle part in their hair, which I thought was interesting. And people have also noticed that, whether or not it had any connection to like somebody in his life, maybe a younger version of his mother, possibly even Diane, the woman who had originally broke his heart in 68. Difficult to say, but he was abducting them usually at night near rural areas that were dimly lit or construction sites. And I do want to talk through just some of the initial victims, the key victims that happened just in 1974. We have Donna Manson, which I think if you scroll down to maybe the following page, I might have pictures of some of them. We have Donna Manson. She was on March 12th. She was abducted. She was a 19-year-old student at Evergreen State College. She disappeared on her way to a jazz concert one night. Following that, just about a month later, we have April 17th, another abduction. This was Susan Rancourt. She was an 18-year-old student at Central Washington State College, disappeared after a school meeting. We then got Roberta Parks on May 6th. He's very consistent month over month with these. A 22-year-old Oregon State University student. She disappeared on her way to meet friends for a coffee one day. Then we get Brenda Ball. This was June 1st. She was abducted, a 22-year-old who disappeared after leaving a bar near the Seattle area one night. And then this name, I believe, is pronounced Georgian Hawkins. June 11th, she was taken. She was an 18-year-old University of Washington student who disappeared while walking between her boyfriend's dorm and her sorority house. She was on foot, alone. And I will get into just a little bit of like the early methods of how he's going about this, which I think you'll find interesting. How is he luring these women, right? Because there doesn't seem to be any sort of a struggle. Nobody's really noticing them or hearing them get abducted. What Bundy would do, because he was so manipulative, he would use these tricks where he would often wear a sling or a cast on his arm, like a fake cast. And he would approach a girl, in an area where there's not a lot of people, maybe at night. And he would say, "I'm so sorry. Could you help me? I have all these books," like posing as a university student because he's in his 20s. Don't forget. Like he's young.
I kind of remember this now. This is coming back to me a little bit.
Oh, yeah. And he would basically get them to his car where he's like, "Could you help me load these books into my car?" And, he was good looking. Again, he seems disarmed. He's in a sling. They're like, "What is this guy going to do?" And he would lure them to his Volkswagen Beetle, brown Volkswagen Beetle, and then knocked them unconscious when they weren't looking, restrained them, and then would transport them to an isolated area where he would torture and murder them in horrific ways. This was a monthly occurrence for him. For many of these women that were either abducted or sometimes they were even lured out on dates, he would sometimes make a very long con out of it and he would take them out for a drink or something. And then only when he was like, "Let me take you back home," would something go down. There was something that was consistent all the way through. They were always knocked unconscious at some point, or they were maybe beaten close to death. They were often sexually assaulted every single time, and most of them were strangled to death. The manner of the disposal did seem to vary a little bit with some of the earlier crimes, where sometimes he would discard the bodies in similar locations. Like he would hide them all in one place in like a rural mountainous area, which is how some of them would come to be found when hikers would stumble upon the corpses. But there was one instance, I believe it was one of the first kills for Donna Manson, where he was in a fit of paranoia and he actually burned her body in the fireplace of his girlfriend, like over a very long period of time. Oh yeah, by the way, he had a girlfriend through the vast majority of this.
Oh my God.
This will shock you only because we both studied acting, but do you know who his girlfriend was?
When
It's fine if you don't.
I'm going to be like, "Oh, I knew that."
Well, hold on. Maybe I'm getting it confused. I'll wait to reveal it a little bit later because I was like, but basically, yes, he had a girlfriend through all of this. And for Donna, when he had killed her, he was in a fit of paranoia about getting rid of the body. So he claims he burned her body in a fireplace. And I'm like, bodies don't really cremate that way. But he claimed he stoked that fire for hours, just consistently like poking at the remains to like break apart the skull, break apart the bones. And I'm like, again, bodies they don't cremate like that in like a normal fireplace. So I was just confused by it as like whether or not, I'm like, is this another one of his like fictional stories that he just embellished? But again, Donna's body has never been found. So maybe there is some truth to it. We don't know. So let me keep going. We've talked about the manner of disposal. And again, all of this is happening right within a single year. Don't forget, all of these kills, 1974, and most of those remains were not going to surface until we reach the fall of that year. And by that point, over the summer, there were 2 additional victims. You might be able to see them.
I don't know if it's on the second page or the third page down. This was Janice Ann Ott as well as Denise Naslund.
Yes, I see them.
They were lured in a very different way. He was starting to break his pattern of taking women at night. He took them in broad daylight from the same park, different times of the day. This was near the Lake Summamish State Park, where witnesses actually claimed they saw Bundy talking to the girls separately at different points in the day. When they were abducted and taken, there was a point where both girls were alive together, and he had forced one of them to sit and watch while he killed one girl first in front of her.
So were these two friends, the two girls?
I don't think so. No.
Okay.
I mean, I could be wrong about that. Creepers correct me, but I didn't read anything that they were friends. They were abducted, from everything I read, at separate times during the day, like possibly within hours of each other.
But then brought back to the same place and
kept in holding. Yeah. He would, and you would see this like with some of the, as he becomes more and more emboldened, he would keep the girls with him and alive for longer periods of time. Initially, he would usually kill within the same day, possibly the same few hours of abducting them. This would start to be very different, where you're starting to see some girls that are kept alive for possibly a week, possibly 2 weeks, sometimes close to a month. Like, he's just pushing his limits, you'll find. But again, this is important because this was maybe one of the first times that really witnesses got a good look at him. You know, and you could see some of the earlier police sketches, but nobody was looking at Ted Bundy because he was a good-looking, charismatic, clean record law student. Nobody was looking.
It's also
even though
weird.
they saw him. Like, it's just, it's crazy
but you know
to me.
what's so weird too? You said he was getting involved in politics too, or was
It was briefly, yeah. I mean, it was like he had abandoned that. He wasn't a part of the re-election campaign at this point because he was going back to law school.
It's this whole case. I mean, I know that Ted Bundy is much bigger than that of this case, but the one that we covered at the live show, it's right now kind of reminding
extraordinarily
me
similar.
Yeah.
Yes, I thought about that too.
The
Robert
guy
Hansen.
next door sort of thing, Robert Hansen. It's reminding me of that quite a bit.
It's the confidence, I would say, in the kill, because he gets so confident at a point that he becomes sloppy in what he's doing, which I think some people could argue that's maybe the fatal flaw that hit Robert Hansen, where they're so assured that their tactics of manipulation are going to get them out of it, that it's ultimately where they slip up. You know, they can't talk their way out of everything.
Yeah.
It's such a consistent thing that plagued this case of people like having it right in front of them and just pushing it off because they're like, he's too good looking to be a monster. Like, that was the sentiment from police. So, like I said, these two women, Janice Ott as well as Denise Naslund, they were taken in broad daylight. They were both killed, according to investigators. Like, one girl sat and she watched the other girl get killed, and he was starting to really enjoy tormenting his victims. He liked to see the panic before their death. He would also often do this thing where he would, I'm not going to call it breath play at all, but he would try to strangle or suffocate girls, not to the point of death, but just to the point where they were unconscious and then regain consciousness, have a moment of panic, and then he would do it again and again and again. He would really torture them to the very end. But I already lost a nail. It's fine.
I was going to say, I also was thinking how every costume, I think you've had nails, and I loved it.
Every single, yeah, I was trying to think. I was like, do I have to do nails for Lisa? And I was like, I have to do them. I'll attach this at a certain point. But I also want to quickly, before we go on a little bit more, and I know this is like a very lengthy case, but I just want to talk about a little bit of the horror of maybe what that must be like to know that, like, this is 1974. Everybody in this area knows that girls are going missing. And if you're a young college age girl and you meet up with a guy, maybe for a date, because some of these girls were lured on dates, to have that moment where it clicked for them, where they realized that he was the guy who was taking all of these girls. He was the unknown predator, and they're in his company. Like, maybe I'm not articulating that well, but like, that hit me last night while I was rereading some of this research, and I was so overwhelmed by the horror of what that moment must have been like for those girls, to know that they're sitting in a car with the enemy.
Yeah. And
all along.
again, kind of like the fight or flight of like Cindy in the Robert Hansen case. then you have to make the decision, what am I going to do? And also, I think it's important that you call attention to it because it's something that just young women, we have to face like all the time. Not at a Ted Bundy level, but you have moments where you go on a date with somebody and you feel that instant kind of like something feels wrong. I don't feel good right now. And to
you can
listen
never
to that
fully
instinct,
let your guard down.
Yeah, and to listen to that instinct because you don't ever want to get in a situation where you are caught where you can't get out.
I think you're very right. It was so interesting that you're bringing that up because I was actually rewatching an interview last night of one of the girls who actually escaped him around this time. And she didn't tell her story for like over 20 years because she was so ashamed. This happened a little bit later. I think it was actually in Utah, but she was brought out in a car with him and he was driving on like a dirt road and she had it in her mind. She was like, oh my God, he's going to try to make a move on me. She's like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do anything with him. And she's just constantly thinking about how she's going to get out of like not embarrassing him, not embarrassing herself and like rejecting him and like her fear with that, only for him to lean in and say, I think I'm going to kill you. Like, and she got away. I think she was one of the ones who was tormented in the woods with like the breath play. Again, I have to stop calling it breath play, but he was doing this game where he was suffocating them to the point of unconsciousness and then reviving them. But in the midst of that, she somehow broke away from him. I forgot how exactly she got away. And she went running through the woods and fell into like a river, which was like a rapid, and it literally swept her away. That was how she got away. And when she finally got out of the river, she just walked herself home out of the woods in such shame because she had been raped. She was in such shame about revealing to the people around her, her religious parents, she said, that she had been raped because she grew up Mormon. And her words said, the sentiment that was always taught to me that if it's between your life or losing your virtue, it would be better off that you were dead. And I was so overwhelmed with that sentence and like everything that's wrong with that. I won't go too far down like her case because again, we're getting ahead to 1975, but I just wanted to take a quick like detour to talk a little bit about the magnitude and the horror of this for these girls. Cause I think it kind of gets lost in how much story there is here. Really sitting with this is like extraordinarily difficult.
Yeah. Well, it's so psychologically damaging. And it's also something that the majority of the world will never experience that. It's an experience only they will ever know. And it's so hard for anybody else to be able to empathize with them on that level. So
impossible. I kept writing that in my notes. I was like, it's incomprehensible to me. That level of fear, that level of horror is incomprehensible in my mind. And it was, I'll press on. I'm sorry. It was very overwhelming for me while I was reading it. And I just wanted to take a minute to talk about it a little bit. But like I said, we're still in 1974. So the bodies are going to be discovered in Washington up near Taylor Mountain by students, mind you. I believe they were hiking. And at this point, Bundy has already left the state. So he had gotten a second acceptance into a different law school. This was the University of Utah Law School. So he moved out to Salt Lake City. So we're actually jumping from Seattle to our next city down the line, which is going to be Salt Lake. And this is around August that I believe he left Seattle behind. So he's already got out of Dodge. Nobody's going to be looking at him because they're already not looking at him. But this was also going to mark a very new era that was headed into the new year where Ted Bundy was only going to get worse. So he found this school and its curriculum impossible. He could not handle being a law student. And people break this up into inciting incidents between the mother, the breakup, and then this, where they say the things that drove him were revenge, a distrust for women, and this need to succeed. And when he got to law school and he couldn't succeed, they believe it broke something in him again. Because you could have argued, you're like, maybe he would go to law school and that was what because like, why is he doing it? Like maybe that's what he wanted to focus on and he would leave what happened in Seattle back in Seattle. Something went wrong yet again. The feeling of failure consumed him to the point where he needed to kill. And this would take us to September 2nd, where we are going to get one of the first victims in this new era. Bundy had raped and strangled a still unidentified hitchhiker, and he had not done it in Utah. He actually went out to Idaho. Another thing that you'll notice is that he tends to travel across state lines. All in all, this would span over 8 different states.
Wow.
Which makes it increasingly difficult, especially in the mid-70s, to track if all of these murders are connected to the same person. So he had raped and strangled a still unidentified hitchhiker in Idaho, and then he returned the next day to where he left the corpse to take pictures of it and dismember the corpse and take pictures of that before eventually disposing of the remains in a nearby river. His kills and post-mortem mutilation and afterplay, as he would call it, were going to intensify. Just about a month later, he claimed another girl, but this time she was much closer to where he was in Utah. This was 16-year-old Nancy Wilcox, and you might have a picture of her as well. She was from Holiday, Utah, which I believe is a suburb that's not very far outside of Salt Lake. She was walking on a very dimly lit roadway when Bundy had actually stopped his car. So this was a lot opportunistic, a lot of it. And he had used force to walk her into the darkness of a nearby orchard on this dimly lit road. She was then pinned to the ground, where he fully restrained her, got her back into his car, and took her back to his apartment, where she was kept and killed over a period of 24 hours. They believe he kept her for a very long time and then discarded of the body in a rural area. Kept her alive, I should have said, sorry. Within that same month, we are now going to go to the 18th of October, where we get Melissa Smith, a 17-year-old daughter of a Salt Lake suburban police chief who suddenly went missing.
Ooh.
She disappeared after leaving a pizza parlor at around 9:30 p.m., where then her fully nude body was found in a nearby mountainous area 9 days after her disappearance. What shocked investigators was that she did not show 9 days worth of decomposition. A post-mortem examination would show that not only was she abducted, but she was kept alive intentionally for close to a full week before she was killed and then discarded.
How old was she again?
She was 17. This was 17. Melissa Smith.
Oh.
Yeah. You'll also see that as he's pushing the extremes of the post-mortem play with the bodies, his victims will start to skew younger and younger at times. He's pushing the extremes and the limits of the horrors that he's committing. But these murders kept intensifying. The cadence was no longer just once a month, because this was the 18th that he killed that girl. She was found 9 days later. By the 31st, Halloween night, another girl is taken. This is Laura. I saw it pronounced as M, but it's spelled as Aim, but I'll say Laura Aim. She was a 17-year-old who was leaving a Halloween party shortly after midnight, and she had attempted to hitchhike to get her way back home. She might have been drinking a little bit when she got into a car with none other than Ted Bundy that night. Now, while her eventual discovery by hitchhikers was just as shocking and similar to that of Smith, the girl before, both had been strangled with stockings. They had some similarities showing extreme sexual assault and sodomy. Laura, by the time she was found, is believed to have been kept alive for an estimated 20 days after her abduction, before they believe she was killed on the 20th, and her body was discovered on Thanksgiving Day.
Ugh.
So at this point, we have a lot of girls that he has claimed the lives of, and the investigation is starting to spiral out, because whatever sort of cancer this was that was taking place all the way back in the West, in like Seattle, it has now somehow spread to Salt Lake and Idaho. So it just seemed like there was a new wave of panic, and also the immediacy of like how quick the succession was of these murders, like September 2nd and then October, several murders in October. This was also brand new to the local investigative team, because they hadn't been looking at like all of the previous murders, because nobody had properly made the connection. They were like, this is just brand new.
That was going to be my question. I was like, did they have any sense that this might be the same person?
None yet. Not yet. No,
Wow.
That nobody has made the connection. But that happens a lot when like there are different jurisdictions that are looking at these cases. They assume that it's isolated to just that area. Maybe it could have been like, what do they call it? There's a term for this, but it's like the serial killer, like panic or like wave of the 70s, where they were like, are these copycat killers? Like, what is going on with these young girls getting taken? But I think what disturbed them the most about the last two victims in October, where they realized that they were dealing with a different animal here, was that when the examiners got a hold of the bodies, what they learned about the two girls was that after they were killed, whoever did this had very carefully washed and conditioned their hair, and then had applied makeup to their faces, painted their nails, and then discarded the bodies, which was a very sick detail, which the press got a hold of, and it really started to illustrate for them that they were dealing with somebody who was deranged, extremely dangerous, extremely capable, and very unpredictable and fast. These girls came very fast after one another, so the question was, who was going to be next? How are you doing so far? I should check in and pause with you and just see how you're doing, if everything's okay, because I know this is a lot to unpack. There's a lot of girls that we're going through, because ultimately there's about 30 different girls confirmed.
I literally had a moment while you were running through the last few where I was like, wait, how many are we up to at this point? Like, and I was thinking about the first victims in 74, and like, we're now in 75. We're only in 75, right?
Yeah. I mean, this started like January 74, and we're currently in October. We're still in 74 right now.
We're still, okay.
Yeah, because we're just in the fall of 74. We haven't even hit 75 yet.
It's baffling that they made no connection after doom. It's like one every month or two every month almost.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was definitely a connection made back in Seattle where they were like, this is coming from the same person. It's a proper serial killer. I mean, the girls they didn't know the girls were dead just yet. They were just disappearances. But the girls were going missing at a cadence of one per month. And they thought it could be connected, but then it suddenly stopped. And that was because Bundy moved out to Salt Lake. So it's just brand new territory. There's no formal centralized database for anybody to like cross compare and look if there are similar murders or similar disappearances that are going on in other parts of the country. Like, there is so much around the timing of this that enabled him to do what he was doing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I also had a really weird thought, and I don't know if you would agree with me on this at all, but I was thinking, looking at the photos of the girls and how most of them are pretty attractive, because he clearly was somebody that was also motivated by power and having like power and dominion over someone. But if it got like, if he, and I hate saying this phrase, but like got off more because they were attractive and pretty, that he's like, even your attractiveness couldn't save you from this horror. Like, even you being pretty in this world, I still have power over you. I don't know if you agree with that at all, but that like dawned on me. It makes
a lot of sense to me. It most definitely has more to do with power than it has to do, I think, with any sort of sexual gratification. Although we're not going to downplay that. He was viciously assaulting these women. But to me, it had so much more to do with having complete power and autonomy over women's. And I do think that the attractiveness and the type of woman that he was going after was something specific. I don't think we can ignore the similarities. So I think that makes sense, actually, if he's like, I want to go for the cream of the crop. But it is interesting. Yeah, all of the girls, they never really fell out of the box of being young. I had wondered if at some point he was going to go after older women, and maybe I was like playing into my own theory about this being connected to his mother. But it could be that he has an image of his mother that's sort of frozen in time because she was very young when she had him, but he only seems to go younger.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe that's why he skewed younger. He needed to go after people that were more vulnerable, but didn't want to go old. He ended up going younger.
Yeah, it's a little, I wonder where that comes from. Like, what sort of, what archetype or what person he is envisioning that he is like seeking revenge on, or if it's just young women in general. I wish I had more context, and I wish in his later years he was more forthright about his actual motives, but ultimately we will never really know. But I will keep pressing on, because now that we have all these girls, like I said, the postmortem play is intensifying with the hair brushing, the hair washing, the makeup application, the nails. Like, he is playing with them like dolls before he's going to discard them, knowing that they're going to be found mostly in skeletal states or very badly decomposed. Now, it was partially believed by some at the time that all of these bodies were definitely connected to the same person because they saw the similarities, at least at a local level, in the way that they were killed. They saw the painted nails, they saw the time spent applying the makeup, so they knew they were dealing with someone who had an MO, if that makes sense. He then went after another girl by November. This is November 8th, where Bundy approached 18-year-old telephone operator Carol Duranch at a local mall. Now, He later claimed that the way that he lured her out was that he approached her as an off-duty police officer, which is one of my biggest fears. Somebody posing as like an authority figure that disarms you. He approached her as an off-duty police officer to inform her in the mall that somebody in the parking lot had tried to break into her car, but he ran them off, and he was hoping he could take her out to the car so he could ask her some questions and take a statement from her, which she was in shock over. And of course, she complied. She didn't question it. So she went with him, and she went along with what he was telling her. She got in his car, and from what she could recollect here, she noticed that something was very wrong when they were in the car, because basically he was going to drive her. He's like, I'm going to drive you to the station. We'll take your statement there, and then I'll drive you back and drop you off at your car. He took a wrong turn, and she was like, something's wrong. Something's very wrong. He then jumped on top of her in the car when he had pulled off to the side, but in a struggle, like a fit of a struggle, he became so frazzled, he accidentally handcuffed both cuffs to only one wrist. So she was able to use her free hand, her right hand, to actually unlock the door, get it open, and she went running. She got out. She was possibly one of the first at that time that we could confirm made a successful escape. What was menacing about this night was that the exact same night that this girl got out of his car, Bundy was witnessed the same night talking to a different girl. He immediately, after one girl got away, he went out to go and find another. So it is opportunistic. He's literally just finding them along his route.
And what an ego to
Completely
go through that and then say, oh, I'm just going to go and do the same thing. I'll find another one.
Well, it's also the complex of like the fear of failure, that if he didn't complete the task that he had started, how could he possibly finish his night? So he had found another girl. This was Deborah Jean Kent, sorry. She was a 17-year-old student at Viewmont High School, and I believe she was leaving a school theater production that evening. And there were several witnesses who actually saw him, one of which was the drama teacher. I don't know why a teacher wouldn't get involved when they see a strange man talking to this high school student. But again, at the time, he did look somewhat young. I mean, he's still in his 20s at this point, but they remembered seeing her talk to this guy. They thought maybe it's an older boyfriend, a college-age boyfriend or something. And then all of a sudden, she was gone. She was gone. So at this point, Bundy is about 28, 29 years old, and he has killed possibly tens of women at this point. A never-ending killing spree. Could we just talk about that before we're going to get into what happens in 75?
Yeah, I forgot what age he was, that he was...
Very shocking, very young.
Yeah. And I guess it kind of explains some of the ego and the ambition and the just kind of like we see it. I'm thinking about like Zodiac, but at the beginning of their career, if you want to call it that, that they have more, they're just sheer speed of the kills is more.
It's insatiable the way that they move. Like he could never get enough, and no kill seemed to be enough. Everything had to be intensified. I needed the victims for longer. I needed to do more to them. It only got worse. That's the thing. It only got worse.
I also did not know about him that he did kind of the doll baby thing where he would paint the nails.
Neither did I.
No idea.
I still don't know what that's about.
That's very, very bizarre.
If it could be, I mean, I think this can vary, but from what I've read, a lot of the consensus about like the afterplay with victims after they're dead sometimes has a lot to do with humiliating them. And I think especially if he was going after all of women, where he's like, I want to really hold power over women. There's something humiliating about like, even in death, making them look pretty, do you know?
Yeah. I don't know if you'll get to this or if it's something you saw in your research, but did he take like items? Like, was he one of those killers where he wanted
that's so interesting,
like mementos?
I don't remember. I mean, it would be shocking to me if he didn't, but I don't remember reading anywhere that he did.
Yeah.
They definitely found certain evidence, but the evidence that I remember them finding at like different, in his car and things like that, it was stuff that would have come from a struggle. It was like hair fibers and things like that. Like it was like proper forensic evidence. It wasn't like jewelry and things like that. But I would actually be shocked if he didn't take mementos. I mean,
it is kind of like a hallmark of this type of killer, but I don't know if I actually would be shocked because he seems so just about, he doesn't seem, what made me even think that was like Jeffrey Dahmer, I know, would like keep some of the victims like body parts and stuff because he didn't even necessarily want to like humiliate them. He just wanted them to feel like close to him. That's definitely not the case, I don't think, with Ted Bundy. So I actually, it doesn't shock me that he wouldn't take anything.
They do look to keep like some sort of relic of their pride, their trophy from what they did. He did take pictures of some of the victims after they were dead. So there is something to that. But also, I would also call out the thing that differentiates him is that he has quite a bit of law knowledge. I mean, it's part of the reason, not only just his charisma, his youth, his good looks, but like he knows a little bit about the law. So much to the point that by the time he does get caught, he represents himself in court. So it's a narcissism.
He did not.
He did, which was unprecedented for the time, given the nature of these crimes. But like, it's the ego, it's the narcissism, and it's the ultra confidence in what little knowledge he does have about the law, where he knows, or at least thinks he knows, that he's not going to get caught. So maybe that could have played into why he didn't keep a lot of trophies or evidence, but who's to say? Now, what is kind of wild about this period when we reach 1975, because we had just covered a girl who was in November of that year, is that he was keeping up multiple long-distance relationships with other women. He had multiple girlfriends simultaneously.
Oh my God.
All while claiming the lives of these other girls. And it's becoming increasingly comfortable for him to abduct during the daytime. This was also what threw the investigation off, was that he changed up his MO. He had done that before. He had taken girls during the day, but he had previously, and most often, taken girls at night. You know, it's less conspicuous. There are less witnesses. There are all the reasons in the world why you would do that. He was changing his tactic, which threw everything off, where he was going to take girls when their guard was down because they're like in public parks during the day. And again, he's luring them into his car under this false pretense of like, I need help, or like, can you help me load this? I'm injured, etc. Which it shocked me. I was very surprised that he was becoming that emboldened. But at this point, people are starting to close in on him. So I do think his ego was the fatal flaw, because now that he's doing this during the day, there are more witnesses, at least from a distance, who are kind of getting an image of what he roughly looks like. They know what the Volkswagen Beetle looks like. There are some people who even heard him introduce himself as Ted. Some people who said that, called in with tips to the police and like said, it's a guy named Ted, drives a Volkswagen Beetle, looks like this, white guy, dark hair. And even then police were like, this just doesn't sound like what we're looking for. It's incorrect. It's actually, there should be a whole separate case study on like the police work on this, or lack thereof, where it's just like wild how many credible tips came in, even from people who had intimate knowledge to him. Anne Rule, the girlfriend, calling in and police being like, I don't know.
And he didn't have any connection to police or law enforcement.
No, he had no protection. No, he came from really humble beginnings, I guess. And like, he had no real ladder up, you know, like everything that he had accomplished. And I'm not going to boast about his accomplishments, but everything he had done between like college, the political campaign in that entry level position, and then law school, he had achieved on his own.
Yeah.
But all of this to say, it was used in the media because they were trying to narrow down their suspect. And like I said, shockingly, the number of people who called in who had tips about Ted Bundy, the guy who drives this car, fits the profile, it was all scoffed at by police, even though it was right under their noses. But the killings continued and again got even worse. Additional women across state lines would continue to meet the same fate, even children, at several points where two of his victims were only 12 years old. He was often traveling out of state to start to feed this obsession, and he knew that would throw the scent off, because he had this twisted need to kill, and he wanted to do so in a very vicious way. But if he kept doing it in the same location, people would eventually catch on to him. So he's kind of oscillating between a number of states. He was down in Florida for a period of time, going across state lines for the 70s, virtually no central base where he's committing and dumping all of these girls. This would continue for years. And among some of the final victims of his spree, all the way up through, I believe, 78, were those 12-year-old girls. One was in 75, the other was in 78. And that's after a different situation where he was actually arrested for something separately, escaped. this is an aside, but I'm going to tell you about his escape. This is insane. He was arrested, and I'm getting ahead of myself. I don't want to like jump too much, but basically he got arrested and he was representing himself in court. But because he was representing himself, it allowed him certain privileges, one of which was to use the law library that was within the courthouse, which was not very heavily monitored. But they were like, it's up on the second story. So like, even if we have a bailiff like at the door, like he's not going to go anywhere. Literally jumped out a window. He like in his own court proceeding, he was like, can we take a recess so I can go up and I want to exercise my privilege to use the law library? Went up to the law library, jumped out of a second story window, nearly shattered his ankle, but kept going and went into the woods. Gone.
Again, the sheer confidence.
But I like got away with it. Like he was literally gone. And then I think this was in Colorado, I believe, because he then made his way to Denver and then caught a plane. I believe it was Colorado. Yeah, he made his way to Denver, I think, and caught a flight somehow. I don't know where the money came from. Caught a flight to Florida. And again, even then, couldn't lay low. Had to kill again and went after a 12-year-old girl. Had to kill again.
That's so crazy. And he came back from Florida to the West? Or was he eventually
caught? He was eventually going to get caught again and then made another successful escape. The story is insane, Stu. Like it's
so wild.
There's so much to unpack. Like even just saying it out loud right now, I'm like, I can't believe this really happened, but I was getting ahead of myself. So like I said, he was still trying to fix this obsession over killing. It was going on for years. The spree traveled all the way through 1978 with those two 12-year-old girls, one in 75, the other in 78. The one in 78 was Kimberly Leach. This is one that he would be tried for. She was 12 years old. You might see a picture of her. I think if you go down on the third or fourth page.
Yep, I see her.
She was abducted on February 9th, and she was taken into a van right from her school grounds. Right from her school grounds. Bundy sexually assaulted Kimberly before murdering her, and her body was found 7 weeks later, horrifically decomposed in an abandoned pig shed near the Swanee River. While the exact cause of her death could not be conclusively determined, evidence would suggest that she was brutally beaten and then strangled to finish her off. Lynette Culver was also 12, and she was actually abducted much earlier. So she was in May of 1975, and at the time, she was a bit of an outlier because she was very different from the girls that he was going after at that period in time. She was also taken from her school, but this was in Idaho. She was taken from her middle school. Bundy had kidnapped Culver from her junior high, assaulted her, drowned her, and then dumped the body in a nearby river. An accumulation by 1978 of a confirmed 30 different women that they believe have been slaughtered at the hands of this man, but in a grim shock to people who were really taking a look at this case. There are so many unidentified women who have still not officially been connected to Bundy. They believe he killed over 100 girls. 100 girls. I have never in my life, in all the cases we've covered, read about a man who has killed over 100 girls.
I was just trying to think. I don't even think Night Stalker. I think he was like 14 or 13, maybe.
Even Robert Hansen was, they think it might have been a suspected 25, 26. I have never, ever read about killing 100 girls in less than a decade.
That's actually insane.
And there are so many that we'll never actually know if they were officially connected to Bundy because he never, properly confessed, or like evidence is too minimal or deteriorated, or people aren't going to look at it. But it's just, how are you doing through all of that? Because I've thrown a lot. It just
pisses me off, to be totally honest. Like, I just think to myself, I guess, unfortunately, it was just somebody with such like sheer speed and like just relentlessness that it made it tough for police to track him down or like connect and make a through line. But just to think, especially because some of them skewed so young towards the end, that like that, I mean, it's such an egregious like display of evil.
It is.
It's just awful.
It's like it's like a exercise of his own ego.
Yeah.
Too. It's like even after getting caught, to continue to do it, whether he thought he would get caught again and he just wanted one final thrill of like killing another group of girls. Because I think some of the most vicious, or what's talked about as some of the most vicious of his crimes, took place after that initial escape from the courtroom, or the courthouse rather, between the 12-year-old girl, but also he had attacked a sorority, and he was starting to show signs, which was a brutal murder.
Yeah, I was just looking at those pictures like, oh my God.
Well, I'll get into that in a little bit because it was the first of its kind of evidence like that had ever been submitted and used in a trial, where they were showing pictures of his bite marks confirmed through dental records, his bite marks into the body post-mortem.
It's a true monster.
I think it was him pushing the extremes. Like, it was beyond that of like, I want to keep the bodies for long periods of time. I want them to be dead and I want to play with the bodies. I want to go for younger girls. He was possibly starting to dabble in the idea of cannibalism. It's not confirmed, and he's never confirmed that, but a lot of people do think that he was maybe starting to test the waters.
Yeah, or just like at least start to up the ante or like change tactics or like try, I hate even saying this, but like try different like mutilation methods. Like
he will never be satiated is the thing. If he's someone where his complex is rooted in a need for accomplishing or an ambition to accomplish certain things, there is never a finish line. He will move the sick goalpost every single time.
Yeah. And I wonder what that escape really did for, I mean, I think I can sort of determine, but what it did to his psyche, it just seemed to amplify him.
Two of them, two escapes.
Two. Yeah.
Like it's enough for like him to get away with it once, but to do it a second time and be successful the second time is like, so I'll keep going, because when does this all come crashing down? What is the end to his story? So I'll first cover his initial arrest, because this was back on a highway in 1975 where he's pulled over, and I think he was pulled over because he was driving erratically, and the officer, when he looked in the car, was perplexed because in the Volkswagen Beetle, there is no passenger seat. And there's a whole collection of tools, like a ski mask. There was like an ice pick, rope, like a lot of damning supplies, you could say. But he's a con man, so he's trying to, manipulate his way out of it. But the officer is still pretty suspicious. Bundy tries to take off, tries to speed off down a highway, and eventually gets pulled over and caught again. So they're just arresting him on suspicion of like possession of burglary items, something like that. Like they still haven't formally made the connection that he could be the suspect they've been looking for all this time, because we're years into it. But he is sentenced at that time, even though they don't have tangible evidence. They think that he might be connected to an abduction, so he's going to serve between 1 to 15 years, and he's eventually transferred to the Colorado prison, which is... Oh, wait. Is that correct? No. Sorry.
I just had a full moment where Lisa Rinna was reading the research.
Is that
correct?
No, I'm sorry. No, I was trying to think of when because he escaped twice. I just don't want to get them mixed up, because he had initially escaped from the courthouse, but then presence, hair, car in the car. Okay, yeah, that's what it was. There was the presence of hair in the car, which is how they were able to nab him for the suspected abduction. He would get the 1 to 15 years, but then eventually, I think it's 1976 when he's transferred to the Colorado prison, which he also escaped from, because he had found there was like a light fixture above him, which led to a crawl space. So he very carefully over a period of time was like sawing with a little like knife to open up to the crawl space above him, which led directly into the janitor's apartment on the grounds. So once he was in there was no janitor, he just let himself out the front door, which led to the exterior of the prison, and quite literally walked away from the prison. And I think this happened this was December 30th, 1977. So again, he hasn't even hit 78 yet, where he's going to commit some of the most egregious crimes of his reign. He had climbed through that crawl space, got out through the ceiling, walked away from the prison, nowhere to be seen. And there are pictures of that cell too. You can see what he did. In the aftermath of that, then he had made his way to Denver. That's when it happened. He had made his way to Denver, and he had boarded the plane, I think, to Chicago. And then from there, he had traveled to the various states, one of which was Florida, which was when I believe he killed Leach, the 12-year-old. And then the Chi Omega murders took place. But Bundy is eventually found by 1978. And on February 15th, he was rearrested, and it would take until the end of that year. It is not until the end of 1978. I forgot about this part, where their multi-state cross investigation had finally concluded he was the man behind all of it.
Wow.
It took until the end of the decade, really.
And what was the thing that got him?
So he was initially, what he was arrested for was connection to the 12-year-old Kimberly Leach murder, as well as the Chi Omega sorority house murders in 78. But this would span into the end of the year when they were able to connect the dots, because I think what they had done is they were working towards some kind of a central database, a very primitive form of it, to be able to cross-reference all of the different cases that he was maybe suspected for.
Mm-hmm.
And they started to create the through line, and they were like, Bundy is the guy for all of it. They did not realize it.
A gazillion murders in 4 years to figure it out, but I'm glad they did. I'm very glad.
I will give them the benefit of the doubt to assume that it was a sign of the times that they really had no formal system. But I think that it draws a really important conclusion of why systems like this are so incredibly important, and like why a true crime event like this, not to say it's impossible, but I don't think it could happen in this day and age, which is a great thing.
I always, since the dawn of CreepTime, it never occurred to me until you pointed out to me pretty early on, like when DNA actually came into the fold. And I always forget it was only in the last, 20 odd years or 30 some odd years?
92.
Yeah.
So we're 30, we're 30 years in. But it seemed like it was crazy that they were able to determine from hair samples in his car well before the fact, because I guess that would have been the 70s, that was connected to one girl. So that must not be through DNA. And again, my forensic knowledge is going to be limited on that. I don't really know how they could determine that, if they're looking at a certain pattern of the hair under a microscope.
I can tell you from the wood chipper murder, it was kind of the same thing. They determined with some sort of something about the follicle, the way that it grew out of her head.
Oh, interesting.
Wild. But if it was anything like that. Yeah.
Which I think does show a sign of a struggle. If the hair is ripped out with the root intact, it shows that hair was ripped out and it wasn't that it just fell out, because that often does spell trouble in a forensic sense. If you're not looking at maybe DNA evidence connected to hair. But I will now shift us into what happens in the trial, because I kind of touched on it briefly before. This was somewhat unprecedented to have somebody with this magnitude of crimes being waged against them in a trial to represent himself, but he was determined to, and it became this sadistic spectacle. I think if you scroll down, Creepers 2, if you scroll down to maybe the very last page or the page before it, you'll see some of the courtroom footage and just how smug and shitty he looks, and just how awful this whole trial was, because it would span, there were multiple trials and they would span a couple of different years, but he really created a performance of what was going on. It was a display of his narcissism, his cruelty, in knowing that this is a part that might make you sick. Because he represented himself, any of the witnesses that were going to be called of his surviving victims to testify, he would be given the privilege to cross-examine himself in the courtroom. And that was another wave, a wash over me, where I was like, it's incomprehensible. It is incomprehensible, the unique horror of being a surviving victim of Bundy and sitting in a courtroom, and the actual guy is standing across from you, cross-examining you, explaining why that didn't happen and why you're making it up. I can't think about it. It's insane.
I mean, do you know how many victims actually testified?
I don't know the exact number. And it wasn't all just, there were, of course, victims who, or not victims, sorry, there were witnesses who were there, who were pure witnesses who could attest to it. There were even witnesses on his side, character witnesses who were called up. This is only the surface of the spectacle that goes down here, because like I said, there are several trials. So we're spanning various murders here. And there are some things that go down in that courtroom that are just a little hard to believe and over the top.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the witnesses that he had called was this woman. Let me see if I could find her name. But she was called up as a character witness for him. He had called her as a witness. He proposed to her in the courtroom while she was on the stand, which there is some old law, because this is so rare, that it made the marriage legally binding. So the two did get married through this. And believe it or not, during an unsupervised visit, conceived a child during the trial.
My brain is exploding right now.
It's insane that this happened, and that it even went on for as long as it did. But ultimately, it would be Kimberly Leach, the 12-year-old, as well as the sorority sisters, that they were going to nail him for, because he was sentenced for both of them, both would be for the death penalty. So due to the extreme nature of these crimes and this horde of evidence that would connect him, the prosecution, like I said, sought the death penalty in multiple trials, and I believe the first successful conviction came on July 31st, 1979, connected to the sorority murders. Subsequently, 12-year-old Kimberly Leach, the conviction for her killing came in 1980. Now, Bundy would be executed by the electric chair on January 24th, 1989, in a Florida state prison, and this execution attracted a very large crowd of hundreds of people outside of the prison, which if you scroll down to the final picture or final page, you will see pictures of this, many of whom were there to celebrate with signs reading, "Burn, Bundy, burn." Throughout the trial, his behavior remained very erratic before he was eventually sentenced. He was confusing everybody, throwing the scent off by uncovering false motives, creating personas and backstory that didn't actually exist. And a lot of people who eventually looked at that's where they got the thing from. They were like, he's a psychopath and he's an unstable personality. So it's difficult to say what is real and what's fiction. In the days to weeks leading up to the execution, he did open up just a little bit more. And he was trying to stonewall this execution to the bitter end by like offering police additional things. He's like, I have information about other murders that I committed. I can help you with information if like you prolong my execution. Like he was really trying to fight it to the very end, but eventually the walls were going to cave in. But in those weeks to months leading up to the execution, he did give a series of shocking interviews to the press, to different psychologists, and ultimately he did so without remorse. He blamed a large portion of his motive on very early exposure to violent pornography, which he never said where. I looked it up everywhere. I was like, who showed him the pornography? Because I had this inclination the whole time. I'm like, I think there's some sort of bedrock of sexual abuse here. He never said who showed him the violent pornography, but he also said he was exposed to it in his teen years, and it had such a profound impact on him that he sought to do that. And I don't fully buy that story.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that.
It's solely because he has lied so much that if this is the narrative he's leading with, or that he wants to be left around his legacy, and not that maybe he was horrifically abused or something of the like.
Yeah,
I don't trust him.
Yeah.
And like I said, there are many who still discredit this to this day, and they believe that it was just a manufactured deflection to cover up some of the darker secrets that were hiding away, the skeletons in his closet. Most psychologists who have studied this do believe, like I said, he is a textbook psychopath and narcissist, and he had created a perfect storm with no remote emotional attachment to anyone around him, paired with some of the reveals that he had issues with his mother, with the breakup, a distrust in women overall. And then, of course, all of the things that enabled him. Him being a young, good-looking, semi-successful white kid, college-age kid. It kept the scent off for close to a decade. And what I will say here to bookend this, I think that when we rehash a story like this, and I talked about this in the beginning, the importance around it is to remember the lives that he took and really try to convey the pain that he had caused across countless families. We will never know how many loved ones of these girls were affected by what he did to their daughters, sisters, and friends. It is kind of immeasurable, to be completely honest, and overwhelming. But to retell the story and highlight the cruelty and the calculated way that the monster went about his crimes, I think would forever sort of cement this case in true crime history and why people hold it in such a grim regard. And although it's a reminder to everybody of just how evil one can be, I think the most important thing to take away is that evil does not always present as evil. And that was the downfall of the police in this ongoing investigation. They had many opportunities across the board to try to nab him, to look closer at the things that were being tipped off to them. And they never looked at him because he did not present as a monster. But that is what I have for you today. That is the complete case of Ted Bundy, of the murders, his abductions, and all of the young girls that he claimed, and so many of the unidentified women that we will never know the names of.
Well, I just want to say thank you also, like, for me personally, hearing this story, I mean, it's stuff that I need to be reminded of as a listener. I know so many of our listeners are going to walk away because you were so thorough and that was just phenomenal. But I'm sitting here reminding myself of like, don't walk throughout the world thinking that because somebody is good looking or attractive or charismatic, that you don't have the agency to like push back when something feels wrong. So just thank you for that reminder too. And even looking at these photos of the, it's Friday, Ted, and people having posters. It's just like, I even hate seeing that because I feel like he died in fame too. Like there was a level of fame even surrounding his death. And that's unsettling
interesting you bring
too.
that up. Yeah. The press had kind of depicted that too at the time. And there's a very infamous, I didn't include it in there, but there is a very infamous photo, which I believe is real, that was taken after he was executed in the electric chair. And I think it's infamous because he appears to be smiling. It's just the way his face sat.
Oh, I kind of think I might have seen this photo
It's just
before.
the way his face sat, but the way that the press depicted it, they were like, a monster dies with a smile on his face. And I was like, what a horrible and accurate symbol of, I think, the way that he actually went out was that even in death, he had the notoriety. He had achieved the notoriety that he had always sought, which is why I wanted to write this research and try to reframe the story in a bit to really not shy away from the cruelty of what he did. I mean, some of the things that went down with especially the latter murder of the Chi Omega girls. I mean, those girls were bludgeoned. They had bones broken in half while they were still alive. I mean, it was partially like bitten, eaten. Like it was truly horrifying. That's what he should be remembered for, not for any of the he was so charming or he was so good looking or he was able to like get a wife while he was like in a major trial or have a child. Like none of that was an accomplishment. None of this is an accomplishment. Right. All of it is just a display of what an inept man he was and how sick and little he was in his mind and all of what he created and all of what he inflicted to try to compensate for that.
Speak on it. Oh, Lord. That, like, honestly,
I know that was a long case. Thank you for sticking with me through that because that was a long case.
That was really fascinating because I truly didn't know. I've only had the very minimal like top line of Ted Bundy. I've never known just how vast that his like killing spree really was. It's making me honestly think to myself like there should be policies in place for like when somebody goes to the chair like this where people aren't going out there with like posters and like making it a bigger thing. I just feel like I don't know. This is just my opinion, but I feel like as a family member or someone related to a victim, I can't imagine what that must be like seeing that like on the day that they're, or maybe it's different. Maybe they feel like they
Some
want
of the
to
victims'
participate
families
in
were
that.
a part of it.
Were they? Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. I would be really like fascinated to hear from them how they feel one way or the other because that's kind of the root of this case. It's like just the glamorizing of all of it is so odd.
I think the intent of it, it's interesting because I see what you're saying, but the intent definitely comes from a good place of wanting to exercise like the absolute. It's so interesting. This is why I struggle so much with the death penalty because I think when there's so much pain, like what this man caused, the only way that people can conceive of like how to get an eye for an eye is to kill him, to sentence to death. And I almost resent it in a way because I understand where it comes from. I understand where this kind of fury to protest it and say burn Bundy, burn comes from. But it almost feels like the easy way out for him in a strange way. I mean, for him to live the remainder of his days in like a 4x4 room, that should be a fate that he would have to suffer. You know, I mean, there is no version of justice that will actually be an eye for an eye for what he actually did, for all of the girls that he took. But so I can understand why sometimes it might be misguided where people are like, it has to be the death penalty. And I don't know, I sit in a very like gray area when it comes to that.
Yeah, same.
Do you feel
actually, same here. No, I think I feel the same way because it's, again, it kind of harkens back to like, it's an experience, hopefully, that you and I
have to
will
cover
never
my
have
face.
to.
I'm sorry. I forgot what I looked like until this moment. I was
Do you want
like,
me to cover my face?
me talking about like the ethics around the death penalty. And I'm
I
like,
know.
do you know what I mean?
I know. As I'm like holding a fake knife and Jack Nicholson is behind me. But like it does kind of harken back to what we were saying earlier, that it's an experience that like you and I will hopefully never have to go through. And so I do kind of think, I mean, if you are related to a victim or you experience that, like I kind of think whatever way you decide to grieve or view it is like up to you, really, and you're justified in that, to be perfectly honest. That's how I feel.
I do. I think the intent was always to never to like exacerbate his fame, even if that was a byproduct of what they were doing with the protest. But it was just to make sure that it was clear and that it got back to him that there are many people who wish you death. There are many people who want to see you burn. And again, I mean, the case will forever live on because it's historic. I mean, just from the sheer number of kills. And I think it's the thing that continues to like baffle me about it is just the real like clear lack of motive and like what he really wanted. We can boil it down to like, it was about power. It was about revenge over women. It was about accomplishment. It was about the thrill of the kill and like having an addiction to killing. Like all of those things seem like components, but it's just so abnormally evil to me that I'm like, there has to be more to this story that somebody hasn't uncovered yet.
Yeah.
We may never know though. We really may never know.
Yeah. Well, I'd be interested to go and look at some of those interviews that he did, I guess, before he received the death penalty. I mean, I don't even want to like really learn or give him the satisfaction of like tapping into his mind, really. But
it's the question that haunts all of these cases.
Yeah,
is the why.
it's like, why?
That's why we
That
seek out those interviews. Yeah, we have to like look to the source and say, why did you do it?
Right.
Why would you do it? Should we take a little reprieve? Why would you should we take a little reprieve?
I'm like, I know. I'm like, oh, baby. Let me take a swig of the Sprite Zero. Lord. Yeah, put those glasses on. This is the real us.
Doing a 90-minute case was a lot for a Tuesday in this wig.
Baby. In that wig. And not in that wig. It's a lot. It's a lot.
I'm really annoyed this nail fell off. Like I keep trying to hide it. I'm like tucking it when I'm like.
You just have to go get some real Gel X and then you'll.
No, I want to use my Dollar Tree nail glue.
I know. Because once you start, it's hard to. Once you start, it's hard to stop.
They ruin your nails. They're like I've been getting gel forever. I had to stop because they were really like fucking up my nails.
Yeah, I will say with Gel X. No, it's a lie. They've kind of fucked up my nails. Yeah, it's more of the same.
This nail glue is also fucking up my. Like I'm not saying that this is any better. Like I'm just ruining my nails, to be honest. Because to get nail glue off, what is stronger than nail glue? Genuinely, like nail glue is so strong.
I honestly, I don't know what they put in it. I don't know what kind of binders are in there, but it's basically crazy glue, baby. That's what it is. Harry Hamlin.
Harry Hamlin.
Did you get any of Harry's? Wait, what was it that he made that season? Sauce? Harry sauce?
Was he like canning tomatoes or something?
It was like
from his garden?
It was like, yeah, he was like very much in his
that's
like
such
home.
a man in like his 60s, 70s. That's like such a
in LA.
Yes, from his garden.
Oh my God. Garcelle, try Harry's sauce.
I do have an itch to like do other housewives. I'll tell you, Sutton was close. I was close to doing Sutton.
God, I did kind of try to manifest that for myself because I have your little name 'em wine glasses in my cabinet, and I looked up at one and I was like, please.
That's just like that's a hard one to do because like our faces are so different. This was easier because my face is closer to Rena's.
But you got the natural lusciousness, baby.
There's nothing natural about this, but thank you.
Okay, well, enhanced. But the unenhanced version is also naturally pretty big.
Lips are about to explode with filler. Know that.
Whereas mine is completely, well, this is overlined, but I wake up in the morning with no makeup on. There is no upper lip.
Is that when you're like, well, my lips are very full.
Dehydrated.
Well, I was going to say.
Well,
I was going to say, I was like, sometimes like when you're dehydrated, like your lips do like shrink up a little bit. Not yours personally, but like everybody's.
Well,
but
mine personally. We know I don't drink enough water.
I sleep on my stomach. So when I wake up, my lips are really full. And then they go down. I don't know why. They like pool with blood.
Know that, creepers. That's a hack. Sleep on your stomach.
Yeah, I'll just
Wake
give
up with
myself
full lip.
early onset osteoporosis and like throw my spine out of whack just so I can have a fuller lip for 1 hour every morning. That's fine. But what you really need nothing except a contour palette and a little Wet and Wild.
One last thing. Does Lisa have implants? Lip implants?
I think, okay, she's had those lips for a long time, well before like hyaluronic acid or like soft fillers.
Yeah.
I couldn't even do quotes with double quote because I'm hiding my middle finger. I'm like, soft fillers. And so I think what she might have had done was maybe what Jeffree Star got done back in the day, which were early fillers, which were silicone, which do not go away, by the way.
Oh, like they don't dissolve or anything.
Well, no, they have to be like manually like cut out with like an incision under your lip because it's like they harden over it. It's like you're putting like a gel in there that just kind of sits. Whereas like the fillers they put in now, they're like naturally occurring in your body, most of them. So your body just reabsorbs them over time and it eventually goes away.
Oh my God, that makes me so queasy to think about having silicone in my lips.
Oh yeah, all over your face. You can have it. I mean, they used to get it anywhere. You can get large amounts of silicone. They used to get it. That was like pre-Brazilian butt lift where like girls were getting silicone.
I'm sorry. I just had a moment where I'm envisioning Shelley Duvall and Lisa Rinna in like the 80s sitting down at a cafe in LA. And she's just gotten her lips done. She's like, Shelley, let me tell you something. These lips, I'm booked.
Shelley. My agent was really trying to get me booked on Days of Our Lives. And it happened. And, I loved it. I did the show for so long. Wow. I forgot.
You're in it. You're fully in it.
But like taking the glasses off, I was like, shit.
Yeah.
It frightens me. All right. We're going to wrap this up so I can film a bunch of TikToks and have a spectacular day. Yes. The wig at this point is getting a little Tina Turner, but that's going to be fine.
I got to take this robe off and air.
You look like
I have to air out.
You look like you're getting sick.
I feel it. Honestly, one last thing. Do you remember my building looks so much like the Shining Hotel?
Yes,
it looks like the Overlook. I kind of just want to pop out in the hallway just for 2 seconds and be like, and then pop right back in.
You should find that old man who keeps asking for your number and be like, I'm ready to give it to you.
I'm dead serious. I was just going to say that because we had an incident last night on the elevator.
With the old man?
Mm-hmm.
What did he say?
Well, actually, this wasn't towards me, but there was a mom and her daughter.
You were a witness to it?
I was a witness to it. There was a mom and her daughter. He said something weird and I didn't catch it. And then she turned to me and she said, I try to keep conversations with him very brief. And I said, I know. I got you. And the daughter was like 12. And I was like, I don't know what he
said
just
something
said.
Like weird to her?
I don't know if he said something weird to her.
Something
but
weird
mom,
about her?
Maybe something weird about. He said something about, I heard family come out of his mouth. Like my favorite something. And I was like, something ain't right. Something ain't right
say
with what he
something
just
to this man.
I'm like,
someone has to be like, can you shut the hell up, you
I'm
creepy
about
bastard?
To. I swear to God.
And I think it has to be this person.
I'm hiring you. I'm getting you on a flight today in that costume.
Listen, I do cameos. I will FaceTime anybody you need for a price, and I will say, you need to shut the hell up because you're a creepy bastard.
You're a creepy bastard. Harry Hamlin.
Harry Hamlin. Sorry, did you just talk about the husband?
Don't you dare go near my family.
Kyle Richards running in the background in a black cloak. Literally running away from
that's the best part.
She's literally coming from the courtyard of Hogwarts, which, by the way, gotta tell you, I got a PS5. Meant to tell you this.
Oh my God.
I got a PS5 because I was like, I'm really craving a video game because I used to play Grand Theft Auto in college.
Yeah.
So I got the PS5 and I was like, maybe I don't. Did get Dead by Daylight, by the way, was playing it. You played that,
You were
right?
playing what?
Dead by Daylight?
No, I played After Dawn. Which you got to play because you would really like After Dawn.
I bought Dead by Daylight because I thought that and I was like,
God.
I was like, this is fun. I was like, I don't know why Stu loves this so much. It's okay.
No. Oh shoot, no, it's After Dawn. And there's another one that I used to play. I'll send you both, but you would get a kick out of them. Oh shoot, I don't know what Dead by Daylight is, but that sounds fun.
So I ended up getting Hogwarts Legacy, which is so fun. So fun because I'm a Potter kid.
Right.
It's a whole open world of the world of Harry Potter. Like Hogwarts, Hogsmeade, like the Forbidden Forest, it's all there. I haven't even unlocked half the game.
Do you like open world games? Like, is that
Love
more
them.
your thing? Yeah.
Love them. Yeah. That's why I love Grand Theft Auto so much. I mean, also because you can shoot people in the head, and that's kind of what I'm looking to do.
Get your anger out. Did you ever play Red Dead Redemption?
No, but you've talked about that before.
That's a really good open world game. Yeah.
What's it about?
It's basically you're like a out west, like just outlaw in the West, and you ride on horseback and go into a town and just like
that sounds fun.
It's like very Westworld.
I will say I like fantasy games a lot. That's what I played when I was really young. So that's why Harry Potter for me, Hogwarts Legacy is like it. And I think they're coming out with a sequel to it as well.
Oh my God.
I'm super excited.
Next time I'm in LA, we're having a game night.
By beat, like nothing can replicate the joy of flying on a broomstick in a video game.
Yeah.
Like through Hogwarts. I'm not kidding.
I need that on a soundbite.
And you'll get it. You'll get it, okay?
You'll get it, okay?
Because it's wackadoodle time.
It's whack-a-doodle time.
It is wackadoodle time. Well, before I lose my absolute mind and they commit us both, we should wrap up this episode. I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode. It was a monster of an episode. I'm going to hide this nail yet again. It was a monster of an episode for CreepTime, the podcast. Thank you for listening to the full and complete case of Ted Bundy. Continue to suggest cases because our next story is going to be Salt Lake City, which this one dabbled into, but there are quite a few things already coming to mind from Salt Lake.
Yeah.
Was Ruby Frankie that case from Salt Lake?
Ruby Frankie.
She was like the vlogger mom who was like, oh my God, what the hell was her stupid YouTube channel called? It was like 8 plus a van or something. And she's like a mommy vlogger, but she was literally like extreme abuse to her children, like locking them in cells in her home.
Oh my God.
And it was like a compound, which also I have a lot to say about that and about the father and what he did or did not know, because I've got my suspicions.
Okay.
Allegedly.
Well, you're giving me ideas for next week.
Oh, right. Shit, you're leading it.
Yeah. No, I'm like, because I had one in my mind, but that sounds very interesting.
I think they were Mormon, which is why it made me think of Salt Lake. But I almost want to say they lived in Arizona. I don't know the full story of the case.
Ruby, what was her last name?
Ruby Frankie. You must have heard this story.
Frankie.
Yeah, it was a big story just this past year or so.
Okay. I'm getting my Mormon wives and housewives mixed up. And
well, while my face is melting, I think we should wrap this one up. I want to thank you for listening, Stu Creepers. I want to thank you for listening. This has been an absolute pleasure to dress up. We have one more, which is going to be our final next week, to celebrate the come of Halloween, to celebrate kicking off the 2025 tour. Again, if you want to get your tickets to come see CreepTime live, whether you want to come with a friend, a significant other, your family, or bring yourself solo or a whole group, please come out to a creepy theater to hang out with Stu and I. It is going to be a night of scary stories and true crime, live and in person in your city. Again, you can get tickets at creeptime.com. I just saw the lone nail on the table and I was like, you can get tickets at creeptime.com. We cannot wait to see you there, babies. Don't lose out on the good seats.
Do not. I literally have my little friendship bracelet from one of the creepers.
And I have my QVC bracelet here, which is a great find. It's incredible. I got to hear more about it. 5 easy payments. And you know
Lisa
what?
Rinna collection.
It's fun. It's funky. I love the color. It's a teal. It's very fun.
And that, Creepers, is the level of commitment you can expect at CreepTime Tour.
Precisely. Well, that's all for now. For now, we will say goodbye.
And good luck, y'all.
See you on QVC, babies.
Bye, Creepers.